Welcome to No Place Like Home, the radio show, coming to you on WRXB 1590 AM and Pinellas County Connection TV. This program is presented to you as an opportunity to hear information that can help you fulfill the dream of owning your very own home. We also share information about upcoming special events and programs to help you enjoy the good life in Pinellas County, as well as other items of interest. The sponsor of this program is the Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County, which offers the First-Time Home Buyer Program. I'm Carmen Lemberg, alongside Jane Merlin, your host for today's show. Good morning, Jane. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Absolutely awesome, thanks.
Good, good. You know, not to be the bearer of bad news necessarily, but, you know, this is the time of the year when people start actually getting ready for their taxes, their income taxes.
'Tis the season.
Indeed. And one of the things that we always like to mention is the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Yep.
And that provides a financial boost for people who may be having a difficult time making ends meet. And interestingly enough, there are a lot of people in our community that qualify for that program, but they're unaware of it.
Exactly. Don't know how to take advantage of it.
Exactly right. So we want to make sure that we get this information out to people. The IRS has information on their website, which is www.irs.gov/EITC. And at that site, you can learn about the eligibility requirements of that program. In addition, there are a number of tax sites in Pinellas County. These are free tax prep sites, and that's thanks in part to the IRS, Juvenile Welfare Board, and United Way Suncoast. So you want to find out if you're eligible for those. They're called VITA sites, and they can help you determine your eligibility on that Earned Income Tax Credit, and they can also assist you in doing free tax preparation, which is a really great deal for a lot of folks in the community. And you can get that information simply by calling 211, or if you like to go online and do those kinds of things, you can visit www.unitedwaysuncoast.org/free-tax-help. So a great program.
It is. I've met a lot of the people that actually work at those sites, and they're very knowledgeable, very helpful.
And they go through an extensive training program, too, in order
yes.
to be real versed in the tax laws and eligibility issues and
Exactly.
some of the tax breaks that are out there for people. So definitely want to take advantage of that. And before we introduce our guests, I know that you have a message from our sponsor.
I do, Jane. Thanks. The Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County is offering the First-Time Home Buyers Program, your key to home ownership. We help people in Pinellas, Pasco, and Polk counties make their dreams of home ownership a reality. The First-Time Home Buyers Program is for individuals who've never owned a home, have not owned a home in the past 3 years, or veterans. The HFA offers a low rate on its 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, and if you need a little help with down payment and closing costs, we can help with that too. To get your key to home ownership, go to our website, www.pinellascounty.org/HFA as in Housing Finance Authority. On the right-hand side of the page, there's 3 pictures. And the top 3 are what you want to look at, and it's First-Time Home Buyers, What to Know, Homebuyer Education Class, and our list of lenders. For information about the show, call us at 727-223-6419, or you can email us at newhome@pinellashfa.com. Jane?
Great information, Carmen. Thank you so much. And I know that for a lot of people, home ownership might not be something that they're quite interested in.
Very true.
But also the Housing Finance Authority provides financing that actually helps create some of the apartments that people are renting in the county.
Yes, it's something that we are very big on. We've had some great projects go up. We're actually looking for more projects right now to help get some more workforce housing out there available to folks. Everybody deserves decent, safe, affordable housing.
Absolutely. And today we're going to cover a little bit more about that topic as we discuss the landlord-tenant issues. Our guests today have a lot of great experience on this issue, and I'm proud to introduce Paul Valenti. He has been the director of Pinellas County's Office of Human Rights since 2012. Prior to joining the county, Paul worked in Lee County as well as the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. He's a graduate of the University of Connecticut and Quinnipiac. Did I say that right?
You did indeed.
Oh.
Very well.
University School of Law. He is licensed to practice law in Florida and in Connecticut and is admitted before the United States Supreme Court. Anna Marie Millett is a consumer fraud investigator with Pinellas County Consumer Protection. She joined the department in 2002. She previously worked in the department's criminal section, investigating cases involving unlicensed contracting, theft, and home solicitation. She is certified as a mediator through the Supreme Court of Florida. Currently, she's with the department's dispute resolution section, where she assists individuals in resolving civil complaints through mediation. Anna Marie is also the department's outreach coordinator and provides consumer education to Pinellas County residents at presentations and various community events. Welcome to No Place Like Home, Paula, Anna Marie.
Thank you.
It's always nice to have you back. You've been with us in the past for many different topics, and you always give us such great information, and we appreciate everything that you're doing to help the citizens of Pinellas County.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, Paul, let's start with you and have you explain to us a little bit about how the Office of Human Rights gets involved in landlord-tenant issues.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Our office, the Office of Human Rights, as it relates to landlord-tenant issues, is kind of a limited office of jurisdiction. We really only get involved if there's an allegation of an adverse housing action. They wouldn't rent me the apartment or unit. They are evicting me, and it's for a prohibited reason. And they're doing this because of my race, my color, my religion, my national origin, the fact that I'm a person with a disability. So there's a whole host of other landlord-tenant issues that might implicate other laws that protect a landlord or a tenant, but wouldn't necessarily fall under our jurisdiction. But for those that do, we're certainly available to help people.
So if somebody felt like they were a victim of one of those circumstances, how would they go about the process of getting some rectification on that?
So what they would do is they would contact our office, very easy number to remember, 727-464-4880, and they'd talk to our intake officer. They'd explain their particular situation and what's happening with their housing situation, and we would do an assessment to see whether or not it's jurisdictional for us. If it's something we could help with, we'd set an appointment, have them come in, draft a complaint on their behalf, and conduct an investigation to see whether or not, in fact, discrimination has occurred or is occurring.
And so if it's not necessarily in your jurisdiction, you would be able to direct people on who best to serve them.
Absolutely. We always make an effort to try to refer people along. If it somehow falls outside our office, my colleague to my left, to other agencies or offices that might be able to help. We really don't want people to walk away without some form of either assistance or referral and with a dissatisfaction with the service of the government.
You know, a lot of times these issues bring up a lot of emotions for people. I mean, obviously, if you're being denied access for whatever reason, you know, you're feeling not exactly happy. What sort of advice do you give to people when they're in these situations to help prepare for it and to deal with it?
Sure, that's a great question. I would suggest that folks try to calm down and try to remain rational. Of course, it's emotional, and particularly if it's for the characteristics or protected groups that we have, the laws that we enforce. I mean, nobody wants to have an issue related to their housing simply because of their color or their religion, the place where they were born. But I would recommend that they remain focused and contact us immediately, because if they act out in a natural way, one might suppose, it may come back later to be an impediment to maybe getting to where they want to be, whether it's a recovery through our office, vindication in the courtroom. But by acting out without being calm and reflecting on what the situation is, it may later harm them. So I would really advocate that they take a more analytical approach if possible.
Difficult in the situation, but hopefully people listening can think about what they're doing, give you guys a call, get some help. Once they do contact you, are these issues resolved quickly? Does it take a long time? What can they expect?
Sure. That's a great question. And it could be resolved quickly. One of the things that we do is we encourage conciliation, mediation right out of the gate. And we're fortunate enough to have a volunteer state-certified mediator that's been able to resolve our housing cases at a 70+% rate. So it's incredible. And the nice thing about that is that allows the parties to craft their own future. I mean, they control their destiny on both sides.
Good.
Whereas if it goes through an investigation with our office and potentially a judicial action before a judge or a jury, you lose the control that you otherwise could have had by crafting a resolution on your own.
Exactly.
So we really encourage that. And if both parties agree to that mediation piece, we put that together as quickly as possible. Should that not be able to happen, or one or both parties decline mediation, or it reaches an impasse, HUD mandates that we complete our investigations within 100 days. Mm-hmm. So either way, it's a relatively quick process. I know 3 months can sound like a lot for somebody who's got a housing issue, but to conduct a fair housing investigation within 100 days is pretty good work.
Do you ever do this simultaneously, or once they go into mediation, do you stop your investigation or not start it?
No, we absolutely do it. Because we have that mandate from HUD to keep it within 100 days if at all possible, we'll do a parallel track. We'll have an investigator assigned to the case conducting the investigation, and then our mediator working in a parallel track trying to resolve it if at all possible.
So that if it does move forward, you're already there. You haven't lost
No
any
delays.
time. Everything's fresh.
Absolutely. That's correct.
That's great.
You know, Paul, there is, I think, a lot of confusion about service animals as it relates to housing. And talk to us a little bit about how that relationship works in a rental situation.
Sure. So this is the biggest complaint that we get in the realm of fair housing. And what the law provides is that persons with disabilities that substantially limit one or more major life activities are entitled to reasonable modifications and reasonable accommodations under the law. A reasonable accommodation is an accommodation to an otherwise applicable rule or regulation or policy of a landlord. So, for instance, if a landlord has a no-pet policy, but a person with a visual impairment has the need for a service animal, a guide dog, let's say, notwithstanding that no-pet rule, the person with the disability has the right to ask for an accommodation to that otherwise applicable rule to have their service animal. Once the tenant articulates that they have a disability and they explain the nexus or the connection between the disability and the need for the animal, the burden really shifts then to the landlord to articulate why it would be an undue burden to allow that accommodation. And under the law, undue burdens there's only two ways to prove an undue burden. It either fundamentally alters a landlord's operations or it's unduly expensive. And if you look at it in the context of, say, this guide dog, it doesn't fundamentally alter the landlord's operations. He's still a landlord. He's not being asked to provide medical care or treatment. And it's really not unduly expensive upon the landlord. So it would be hard in that instance for a landlord to articulate an undue burden under the law, and they would probably be well advised to at least consider allowing that animal.
Well, talk to us a little bit about the kinds of animals that are now. I know that I've a lot of news stories about other animals that have fallen into this category of service animals and emotional companion animals, so on and so forth. So, how does that part work?
That's a great question. It's a little different. Folks are probably familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act and the provisions for having service animals in places of public accommodations like restaurants, theaters, et cetera. But under the Fair Housing Act, it's actually more encompassing. It's a broader range of animals that can serve as either a service animal or an emotional support animal. Under the ADA in public places, it can only be a dog or a miniature horse. That's it. You can't have a service pig in a grocery store or the service chimpanzee or monkey. But in housing, there is no limit as to the animal, within reason. I guess the emotional support tiger probably isn't going to fly, no. But there is no limitation only to dogs or to miniature horses. It could be cats, it could be hamsters or ferrets. It could be a whole range of animals that serve as a comfort animal, service animal. What
can a landlord ask in terms of verifying, if you will, that animal would be permissible?
Sure. So the landlord is allowed to ask for some verification that the person is, in fact, a person with a disability and that there is a connection between the disability and the need for the animal. I think where landlords and condo associations, homeowners associations start falling astray of the law, though, is when they get overly burdensome in their requests, require complete medical histories, suggest that, well, okay, maybe the animal does help your disability, but if you took some medicine, that would help as well. That's really dictating a treatment, and HUD disfavors that. The Department of Housing and Urban Development really disfavors that approach. It's not for the landlord to dictate treatment therapies to the person with a disability.
Very interesting. Now, Anna Marie, I know that your office gets involved in landlord-tenant issues. Tell us a little bit about the role that you play.
Well, a big part is consumer education. So whether it's out in public, we'll do presentations on landlord-tenant law, provide resources such as brochures and other literature. We often get calls daily on various landlord-tenant issues, from I didn't receive my refund, my landlord won't make repairs, who's responsible for what as far as, repairs, mowing the grass, whatever the case may be. So it could be as simple as receiving that phone call and giving them some advice, and hopefully that resolves the issue. Or if they need to file a complaint with us, we do notify the landlord by providing them a copy of that complaint and asking them to respond to it. And then through our office as well, we offer mediation. So often we'll bring the parties together, whether that's through a telephone conference or in office, to reach a satisfactory resolution to the matter.
How successful are you in working with people in the mediation?
Mediation is very successful. A lot of times it's just that neutral party that can kind of open up options as far as the type of resolution, and that doesn't have an emotional or personal investment in the issue. So mediation, I recommend greatly. It's an alternative to going to court. Our service is free, so definitely, take advantage of it. And if it can be resolved without having to go through court, which is additional time and money, it's best for both parties.
Well, when it comes to these issues, do your two offices work together very much?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I've contacted Paul on different issues, either to advise me or to refer clients over. Anytime, oftentimes we'll get a call and the general basis may be one issue, but in discussing it, you see there's other issues, and that we do need to provide additional services or referrals or get other departments involved. And as Paul stated earlier, we want to make sure that they receive everything that they need and they don't go away empty-handed. So they may be calling for one issue, but in discussing, we realize there's more to it than just that one matter.
Before the show, we had this really great discussion going on about several issues, which I wish we could have just taped that whole discussion. We were talking about, first and foremost, when people go to rent a property, they should be aware already of some of their rights. Tell us a little bit about, what sort of things they should look for, be prepared for, questions to ask for, and about the lease, making sure they get copies of it.
Definitely. Well, Florida does have a landlord-tenant law. Parts of it are very specific. Other parts are a little more vague. It is a civil matter, but it's very important before you enter into any rental to know your rights and responsibility. When you call me and ask me, well, who's responsible for doing this, or my landlord won't do this, if you know ahead of time that this is what's required, or the notice you have to give should they not fulfill their obligation, it's going to make it a lot easier. As we spoke earlier, it's very important that you get a copy of your lease, and not just get a copy, but read it and understand it. If you don't understand what's in it, or you have questions or concerns, do not sign it, because once you sign it, you're committed to that lease. You've now entered into it whether you agree with it or not. And definitely get a copy. So if something does come up down the road, you can refer back to it and say, okay, this is what we agreed to, or look, here it is in writing, in case anybody has amnesia and forgets what the terms were. So it's very important. And then communication is huge. You can call my department. We're happy to speak with you. But if you don't express your concerns or the issues with your landlord or vice versa, it's very challenging. That party doesn't have that opportunity to rectify the situation if they don't know there's a problem. So having that communication and documenting things are huge.
And we had also touched briefly on access, either the landlord showing up unannounced. I think the example I had given you where a landlord had decided to sell a property, showed up with a whole entourage, and the tenant was more than a little surprised, but also tenants trying to refuse landlords lawful access for that too. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Well, a landlord does have rights to the property. It is their property. But the tenant also has rights, and that is to receive reasonable notice. What's defined as reasonable notice usually is typically 12-hour notice. So I had one consumer contact me and said, they called me at 7 o'clock at night. They want to come at 7 a.m. Well, that is the 7 or 12-hour notice. But again, that's where communication comes in. If you have that rapport and that relationship with the landlord, you can make a request. That's not going to be convenient for me. Could we do it at a later time? Often, if they're selling the property, they are eager to have somebody tour it and look at it for the possible sale. So, like I said, if the parties can work together to try to meet each other's needs. But there are times that if there's going to be damage to the property or there's some emergency, that the landlord can access it without any type of notice for preservation of the property. So again, reviewing the landlord-tenant law, it's not very in-depth. It's fairly easy reading, and it will save you a lot of time and aggravation to know what your rights are and your responsibilities as well as the other party.
Is that on your website by any chance?
We do have Landlord Tenant Law Brochure. You can call our office. We'll mail you a copy. And you can also go to Florida statutes and read the law in its entirety.
And what number would they call?
Our telephone number for our department is 727-464-6200.
I wonder if you both could speak to how Pinellas County is doing in terms of issues related to landlord-tenant.
Sure. I think we do a good job. In 2013, for instance, our Board of County Commissioners passed an ordinance that prohibited discrimination based on gender identity and gender expression, which was in addition to the already protected groups under federal and state law. Plus, here in Pinellas County, we protect against discrimination based on one's sexual orientation as well. So as opposed to a lot of counties throughout the state of Florida or the state itself, our Board of County Commissioners has, as a policy choice, enacted a scope of protections that are broader than what others throughout the state of Florida might enjoy. And I think that's a good thing.
How do you think we stand nationally? What are the top 5 complaints, do you think, that we have here in Pinellas County, and how would that compare nationally?
Well, as Jane and I previously spoke, that landlord-tenant was, a top complaint at one time. Unfortunately, now scams have, taken the top of the list. But landlord-tenant issues are, they're no less important. But as said, a lot of them can be reduced by just knowing what the obligations are. In speaking with the county, some of the issues are maybe you have an emergency and you need some type of funding for a one-time issue, or you're having trouble finding rental. There's so many services through the county that they offer to assist people in home ownership and rental. So again, it's a matter of just finding out what's available and taking advantage of that, and just educating yourself, whether it's your rights and responsibilities or what services and resources are available. But as I said, the county offers so much. But I think all in all, we do a fabulous job.
Great.
Right. And I think it's important to underscore, Ann was speaking earlier about the obligations of a tenant, not just their rights, but their responsibilities. And we think that's important, too, because we often have complainants who come in and they might otherwise have a viable claim or complaint, but then they've done something which compromises that or can muddy the waters or allow a jury or a judge to say, well, it wasn't for this prohibited discriminatory reason. It was because you did thus and so. We recently had an instance where somebody alleged that they were no longer getting services provided by the landlord, so they unilaterally withheld rent. Well, it might have been that was because of a prohibited discriminatory reason, but by not paying rent, they kind of compromised their case, or not putting it into a court registry to somehow evince an intent to pay if I was receiving what I was entitled to by the landlord. So I don't know if you've got thoughts on that.
Yeah, and as Paul stated earlier, oftentimes emotions get into it, and well, they won't do this or they said this, so now I'm not going to pay them. Again, there is that obligation on the tenant's part. Both parties have rights and responsibilities. So when it comes time, say, okay, well, now they've made the repairs or they've fulfilled this. Are you ready to pay the rent? Well, I don't have the money. Well, it's your obligation to have that money available. It's not just free money or you get a free rent. So again, knowing all this information ahead of time or knowing that you can contact our departments to get some advice or some information is a wonderful resource, and it will save you a lot of trouble.
That is some great advice, especially about the responsibilities. And you're right. Now you mention it. I've heard people say that, well, I don't like what they're doing, so I'm not going to pay them. Well, there goes your chance of really having a good foot to stand on, working things out, if you also are acting out and getting that emotion brought into it again.
And the law does specify that as a tenant, you have to give them notice and give them the opportunity to rectify the situation. So it goes back to letting them know and have that chance to rectify it. You can't just, act on emotion and just, say, I'm moving out or I'm not going to pay or, a lot of times we're quick to take those actions, and that's not the appropriate, and it may jeopardize you as far as security deposits or any cases or mediation. So,
as we mentioned earlier, it all begins with that lease and understanding that lease. And if you don't understand it, ask questions. Mm-hmm. What advice or guidance would you give somebody who might be reviewing a lease that has some concerns with how something is written and maybe they don't understand? How would they go about getting some assistance with that?
There are legal resources. There's Gulf Coast Legal Services through Pinellas County. We have a self-help desk, and one of the issues they address is landlord-tenant issues. With Gulf Coast, you can qualify for their services free based on age or income. With self-help desk, it's a minimal fee. And then there's a lawyer referral service. If you actually need to go further or have something more in depth, they can refer you to an attorney, again, for a fee. So you can contact any of those agencies to get some advice and find out what's involved fee-wise. But like I said, if you don't understand it, if you have a friend or somebody who may be more knowledgeable, ask for a copy. Say, may I take a copy with me? I want to look it over. I want to give it some time. We've had consumers that have put a deposit down, signed a lease, and then drove down the street and said, oh, this place looks better. I think I want to. And they're stuck. You've already signed a contract. They're under the assumption that the security deposit or the deposit they put down is refundable, and that may not be the case unless you have something in writing saying so. So again, it's a matter of knowing your obligation, your responsibilities, so that if you change your mind or the following week you lose your job and you say, I'm going to move in with a family member, you're now committed to that lease. You have that obligation financially. So it's important to know those things and be prepared before you just act on it. So again, if you don't understand the lease, you don't know, try to find somebody who can assist you. There are, through a lawyer and attorneys that can assist you at minimal fees, or sometimes. And if you don't agree with something in the lease, it is a contract between the two parties. So if both you agree, okay, let's make that change, you can make that change. It doesn't have to be typed up again. You can just cross it out, have them initial it. But important thing is that you're both agreeing to it and that you get copies of everything.
Great advice. I wish we had more time
I do too.
to continue this conversation. But I did want to mention quickly, Paul, I know that you all have an event each year that coincides with
Fair Housing Month in April.
Yeah.
Thank you for, yes. So every April is Fair Housing Month through the United States. That's the month in which the Fair Housing Act was signed in 1968. And if you go to www.pinellascounty.org/human rights, you can access the informational flyer about the event we'll be putting on this year in April. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for the great discussion today on landlord-tenant issues. Very complex issue, but certainly great to know that people do have a wonderful resource in your offices if they do need some assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Paul Valenti, Pinellas County Office of Human Rights, Anna Marie Millett, Pinellas County Consumer Protection. We thank you for joining us on WRXB 1590 AM and Pinellas County Connection TV. Look forward to having you join us next month. And remember, if you missed any part of this show or want to catch a past show, check out the website or YouTube. I'm Jane Merlin.
And I'm Carmen Lemberg.
Thanks for tuning in. Make it a great day.